Everyone, it's me and I'm here with an overview of next month's Great Artist lesson and project. We will be continuing our Famous Artist series for our 3rd through 5th graders, and they will be learning about one of the most famous and influential artists of all time, an artist who created over 2,100 pieces of art in the span of 10 years, and most of them in the last 2 years of his life. The kids will be learning about Vincent van Gogh. And as we do every month, we give a little history of the artist before we delve into the project. And we're going to start off here at the beginning where Vincent was born. He was born in the Netherlands. And a little interesting fact that most people know, we always say Vincent van Gogh, but the actual pronunciation, if you look down in the bottom left-hand corner there, the actual pronunciation is Van Gogh. I think I'm saying it right, at least I hope I'm saying it right, but that is the actual pronunciation. But I'm just going to keep saying Van Gogh because that's how we Americans say it, but just a little fun fact there for you. But like I said, we get into the overview of where he started. He's in his family. He was the eldest child of 6, and his family was full of ministers. Also, a lot of them worked in the art world, which we'll get into on the next slide. So at the age of 16, Vincent van Gogh chose a family path, and he chose the family path to go work for the family business, packing and unpacking paintings and books. This job took him to so many great places. He got to go to France and Belgium and England, and he visited all these wonderful museums and read all these books and was completely and utterly inspired. But what happened? There's some work-life balance pitfalls that can happen. And we asked the kids, hey, take a look at this math equation and tell us what happened. Well, ultimately, he was fired. He spent too much time being inspired and not enough time doing his actual job. So the first family path didn't work out, so why not follow the other family path? So here we go over and talk about how he followed that path, the fact that he studied theology and took an exam and didn't pass that exam, but was so committed to wanting to help people that he became a missionary. And as a missionary, he lived amongst them in the coal mining district, and he shared their hardships. He slept on dirt floors, wore no socks. He got very sick. He was very, very committed, a little too committed perhaps. And the clergyman said that maybe he had gone too far. So again, Van Gogh was fired. And then we asked the kids, so why? Why was he fired? Total opposite of his last job. This time he was a little too committed to his job. Here's where we talk about how Van Gogh found guidance and help and love in family and newfound friendships. When he had failed as a minister and a missionary, his brother and him used to write hundreds upon hundreds of letters to each other, and often he would include a drawing of a painting that he intended to do. So his brother said, move back home. And at the point when he moved back home, he had decided at that point he was going to commit himself to being an artist. And he painted his very first painting at the age of 27. And that's what we have here. Potato Eaters was his very first painting. But he decided he wanted to study, and he tried to go to art school. That didn't work out. And where do artists go when they want to be inspired by Impressionist painters? Well, much like many other artists, he traveled to Paris. He went to France. And while he was in France, he was among all these wonderfully famous artists, Lautrec, Pissarro, Degas, but Gauguin went and he became best friends. All right, here's where the conversation gets a little hairy. You can't talk about Van Gogh and not talk about his mental well-being, because of course he's famous for cutting off his ear, right? So we just kind of touch upon it here. The fact that he was very happy painting, but that he suffered from hallucinations. And in a state of dementia, oh my goodness, he cut off his own ear while he was quarreling with Gauguin. And he decided at that point he needed to practice a little self-care, and he agreed to be hospitalized. Now, what happened while he was in the hospital is that in a 2-year span, he painted 150 paintings. And those paintings, while they were rich with emotion and bright colors and restlessness, They are some of, if not the most famous paintings that Vincent van Gogh painted, and they were all done while in a mental asylum. So we touch upon this, really kind of talk about the fact that it's important to take care of yourself and that we make bad decisions, but that there's always help out there. But you can't talk about Van Gogh and not talk about the fact that he cut off his own ear and why he did it. So we kind of touch on that, and then we have in the bottom right-hand corner, you see that little eye right there that's just telling you, hey, go take a look at some of the pre-printed art that we have. So the 4 pieces that we have printed for Van Gogh, these 4 pieces were painted while he was in the asylum, and they are of the most famous paintings that he has. So just to have a brief discussion about that and talk about the fact that it was all about, he was very sensitive to the plight of people, the less fortunate, and that he was always seeking calming light and peace, not just in his paintings, but probably in himself as well. So here we have some close-up pictures of a couple of the prints that we have, Irises and Starry Night. And just want to point that out. These are close-ups of those paintings, and the texture is just amazing. One of the techniques that Van Gogh is famous for, and why people are just so enthralled with it, is something called impasto, which was a thick application of paint. They would mix like soap into it, like these flakes, and it stretched the paint, and it added such a wonderful texture to his paintings, gave it dimension and emotion and movement. The other painting that's on the right-hand side, you want to point this out. This is his self-portrait, and he used tiny little brush strokes. Now this is kind of like a modern take of pointillism, and this might be something that they want to do in the project that they are going to be doing at the end of this discussion. So just want to point out, let them see kind of what the close-up look is of one of the Van Goghs is, and just the fact that it has so much emotion and movement in it. And at the top here it says Impressionism, Pointillism, Japanism, and modern art. That is the type of art that Van Gogh did. So really this is just to kind of show that emotion in his paintings, and then also to tap into some techniques that they may want to do for their own project that they'll be doing. Here's a piece of a letter that Van Gogh wrote to his brother talking about his artistic method. And I just would have one of the kids volunteer to read it or read it yourself. But it's just really interesting to hear his words as to what his methods were and why he did it. The fact that he liked leaving pieces unfinished, and he wanted people to feel uncomfortable, disquieting, irritating are words that he used, and that he wanted to challenge their preconceived ideas about technique. So it's just a fun little glimpse into the mind of Van Gogh. So the last thing that we'll touch upon about the artist is talking about how his disquieting technique affected the world. The fact that when people view his art, they have a quiet joy of light and peace about it, even though he was struggling himself. And we just go into some facts here that he painted over 900 paintings and over 1,000 drawings, but sadly in his lifetime he only sold one. And that the most expensive painting to date was this painting of his psychiatrist that sold for a mere $144 million. So at the end of it all, when we look at the life of Van Gogh, we look at the artistry of Van Gogh, he then became this being, this entity, this artist who inspired the entire world. So now we transition from talking about the artist into talking about the project. And we begin that transition by saying, now it's your turn to create one of his masterpieces, but let's crank up the discord a little by breaking it up and applying your own disquieting technique to it. And that's the visual of what we'll be doing here. The kids are going to be working on a mural. They're going to be doing a group project. We have a couple of Van Gogh paintings that we have sliced and diced and cut them up, and each child is going to get a piece of the painting and they're going to put their own mark on it. All right, so on the art card, there is going to be a couple of choices. There's going to be Starry Night, or there's going to be sunflowers, and there's going to be different piles. There's going to be if the classroom is 25 and less, or 35 and less. There'll be two different templates. It'll all be marked clearly so that you'll understand. Now, there are a couple situations where a classroom may have 26 students. In that case, there's one little extra paper, a little headshot of Van Gogh that person could put their own little spin on. But it's this Van Gogh painting, these two paintings, they're cut up. You're going to pass them out randomly. And once we pass it out randomly, in the bottom corner, one of the corners of these printouts is a number. And on that number is how it goes in the sequence when we paste it all back together, we tape it all back together. So we ask that the kids write their name and the page number on the back. That's so important because it'll really help me, who's going to be putting it back together, make sure that I'm putting everything in order correctly and I'm not struggling to do it. So we randomly pass this out. We ask them to put their name and the page number on the back, and then they get to choose a medium. We'll have oil pastels there for them. We'll also have tempera paint there for them, and water and brushes and that sort of thing. And they can choose. Some kids really want to work with oil pastels. It's a lot easier to control, maybe, and do a little bit of that little kind of stroke pointillism. Some people really like paint. And if they don't want to use either of those and they want to do pencil or go off script and do something completely different, they can do that. It's all about them putting their own personal technique and spin on it. It's about making it emotional. It's about using their own application that creates their own story or emotion. And on the slide here, on the left side here, you're going to see some examples of the finished product. So examples of once these murals get pasted or taped back together, what they might look like. There's some suggested colors that are on the page, like paint this green and paint this yellow, like color by numbers. They don't have to do that. They don't have to. It's a suggestion. They can change it up and do whatever they want. But when it comes back together, it makes a pretty interesting looking mural. On the right side up here are just some different techniques. They don't have to do standard painting. They don't have to do standard oil. They can do lines. They can make it geometric. It's up to them how they want to express themselves. And it's okay. It's okay if they want to do something a little different. So that is our project. It is a group project, a mural, and it's all about taking all these different emotions that all these kids have, putting it on a piece of paper, and then bringing it all together in one cohesive piece of art. That's it. I hope it works well. We've never done something like this before, so I'm looking forward to seeing everybody's finished product. Thanks, and if you have any questions or comments or you're unsure of something, of course, drop me a line or pick up the phone. I am here for you. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the hallways.